But if we do, that might be an option. Yes.
For those of you who are already registered at the table, can you please have a seat? We're going to begin here shortly in about 2 more minutes. We'll have an opportunity to talk to the departments when we're done with our presentation. So if you all can just have a seat and we'll give you specific instructions. Thank you. I just wanted to go over some of the housekeeping rules here before we begin. The restrooms are to your left, to the back. We have refreshments, water and juice. We also have snacks. And we have coffee. If you want to get up and get some coffee, you're more than welcome to. Once you register, can you please have a seat? Can you, if you've already registered, please have a seat. We'll need a little bit of quiet. Once I start this presentation, we're going to need to be silent. I appreciate it. If you registered, you just need to let Shannon know, just to give her your name, and she'll check you out.
Thank you.
Go to the other line where Shannon is. Yes. We're going to take a few more minutes while we get everybody registered here. Unfortunately, we have some members that did not register. For those of you who did not register, can you just put one of your business cards in one of our holders, and then you can have a seat. It makes it much easier. Just drop off your business card in one of our booths, and we know that you attended the conference. Yeah, Renee, thank you. I have a bowl up front. If you did not register with the city, please leave a business card in one of the bowls we have on the table, and we know that you attended. Have a seat, and then you can have a seat. Please have a seat, find a seat. If you do not have a seat, we'll get some more chairs. our presentation. If you please have a seat. Bring your chairs. If there's not a table, bring your chairs closer to us. You're going to need to hear me. Can I get a little bit of silence here? I need to ring a bell. I need some silence. Thank you. Please, if you did not register, leave the business cards with one of our staff members here, and we'll put you on that registration list. Please have a seat. I just want to talk a little bit about some of the housekeeping rules here. I need a little bit more quiet. There you go. Thank you. By the way, thank you for being here this afternoon with the City of Sanford. We greatly appreciate it. We're going to be talking a little bit about how to do business with the City of Sanford. But before I begin the presentation, I want to let you know that the restrooms are in the back. We do have some snacks, water, juices to the right where the coffee is. You're more than welcome to help yourself with that, okay? And I wanted to introduce some of our staff that is here. And in the registration, we have Chase and Shannon. They are the purchasing coordinator for the City of Sanford. I am Marisol Ordonez. I am the purchasing manager for the City of Sanford. Thank you for attending. To my right, we have the Utilities Plants Department. And once the presentation is over, you can go ahead and mingle with some of our staff members, okay? We have Public Works Department, Lindsay and her staff members, Teresa. We have the Sanford Airport Authority. Thank you for being here with us. We here to our left, we have our Risk Management Department, Denver. And the second table here is LAHEEP and CDBG programs. We also have the Police Department and their staff. And last table over there is Pam. She works in the Economic Development Department. So thank you again for being here this morning with us. So I'm going to begin the presentation. As you all know, there's a model here in Sanford for those of you who live in Sanford. For those who live in Sanford, they have a model, which is our vision. Now, let's try this. Okay, let's start this again. For those who live in Sanford, they have a motto that they say, we live, work, and play in Sanford. The vision states Sanford is a significant cultural business hub in Central Florida. Sanford is known for its beautiful locations such as the Sanford Riverwalk that is approximately 9.1 miles. The paved 9.1 miles trail connects to the Riverwalk to the 210 miles Florida coast to coast trail and completes the 26-mile look around Lake Monroe. The city is known for its waterfront, extensive transportation network, distinctive and cultural corridor, and its beautiful historic downtown area. So if you're not familiar with downtown Sanford, we challenge you to come to one of our events. We have several events down here, very good ones too. Okay, our mission here. The mission here with the procurement office, the mission is to support the city activities, goals and programs to ensure that the citizens of Sanford receive the high quality commodities and services at the most cost-effective, price and fair, impartial and timely manner. The procurement department follows the state of Florida, Chapter 287-057, just like any other state or local government agency. And that's pretty much anybody in Seminole County in the state of Florida, they follow the same rules. Okay? So, a little bit about our governing body. The city governing body consists of 5 members, 4 commissioners, and an elected mayor. The city manager, city clerk, city attorney serve as a pledge of the city commission. The clerk's office is responsible for commission meetings each month. The city commission workshop meets the 2nd and the 4th Monday of each month at 4 p.m. And the city commission regular meetings, they meet the 2nd and the 4th Monday each month at 7 p.m. So literally after 4 o'clock, a few hours later, the commission meeting begins at 7. For those who, the public meetings are open to the public. If you're one of these vendors that have been awarded a contract and want to attend the meetings, you're more than welcome to attend those meetings. The purchasing division, let's go to the next slide. The purchasing division is part of the finance administrative services. We are responsible for the acquisitions of goods, capital equipment, contracting for services, including construction and capital improvement, professional and non-professional services. The city has 3 staff members, which is Chase, where's Chase right here, and Shannon and myself. We also have a new position that should be posted real soon. That's for contract specialists. So once that position is vacant, we'll be posting it. We'll have one specific person to handle all of our contracts. All right, next slide. So our location, unfortunately, we had to move this vendor fair. By the way, this is our first vendor fair, and we thank you for being here. Hopefully, we can do this on an annual basis. So our location is at 300 North Park Avenue, and we're on the 2nd floor, Suite 236. Our hours of operation is from 7 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. Our office is open on Fridays only for a couple hours, but the purchasing division, including some of the people in finance, we're off on Fridays. So we typically work 10 hours a day. Okay? All right, so we get into the bidding process here. Our bidding process, the first threshold, which is less than $24.99, as you can see, is considered, we begin the bidding process. The purchase less than $24.99 only requires one quote. Okay? The department receives the one invoice, they will process it, and they will pay it. So that's pretty much typically standard. They can't use a P card depending on the vendor if they accept P cards or not. The only way we can accept a P card, or we can pay you with a P card, if it's only for goods. Okay, we cannot pay you for services on a P card. That's city policy. Okay, now anything, we continue with the less than $24.99. If it's a service, it will require a purchase order. We typically process a purchase order even though it's $24.99, only because it has terms and conditions. The department is requested to process the requisition that is converted into a purchase order. When the purchase order is for services, a certificate of insurance is requested. So that means even if we buy something from you and it's $2,200, if it's a service, we are going to request a certificate of insurance. And we're going to talk a little bit more about certificate of insurance and what are the requirements. The purchase order is then sent to the department. They are required to forward that PO to the vendor. Once our department processes that PO to the department, they are required to email you the purchase order. There is, the vendor cannot begin the services without a purchase order. That's another city policy. So in this process, when there's a purchase order, the approval is the director, department approval, purchasing manager, and finance director. Please note, purchase orders have terms and conditions that will be attached to that PO. Okay? We have a mic here. I'm going to take a little bit of break in a little bit so that if anybody has questions regarding our bidding process, they're more than welcome to come up and ask a question. Okay, so here's level one. Level one, anything that's greater than $2,500 to $99.99, departments are required to provide 3 quotes. This has to be electronic, faxed, emailed, however you send it. They are required to request 3 quotes. It is a department's responsibility to ask the vendor if they have an existing contract. So let's say, for instance, a department only reaches out to one vendor and they give a price, $5,000? The department should be asking you, do you have an existing contract with another local government agency? If so, it's up to you to let us know that you do have one also. Only because we do co-op contracts. That saves a lot of time and money for the department. If you do have one, that contract needs to be sent to the purchasing department. What we do is we review it, and then we send it to our city attorney to process a co-op contract for you. So if it's a one-time purchase, then we don't do a piggyback contract. If you're just saying, hey, I just want to buy this one-time item, that's it. If you have that existing contract, we'll use that, but we will not process the PBA, okay? So, let's see. If the department does not provide us quotes or PBA contract, the procurement coordinator will decline the requisition. So what is a requisition? A requisition is a process that we have in place in order to create that purchase order. So what the department does, they enter this data in our system, they'll provide all the attachments that are required, and then it gets sent to our purchasing department. One of our purchasing coordinators will review the attachments, make sure that you have the proper documentation. Once that is completed, then we convert that requisition into a purchase order, okay? If the PO is processed, the approval level is a department director, the purchasing manager, and finance director. So there is a process in our queue. When you're asking for a purchase order and you're waiting a couple days for it, it could take up to a week, sometimes even a month, because of the certificate of insurance. So the process is that the director approves it in the system, and then it goes through a certain level of approvals. If it's a capital project, we have someone who looks at these capital projects. If it's an asset, we have someone looking at these assets. If it's an IT product, then we have our IT manager who's going to review those and approves it in the system. So this is not just a one approval, it has multiple approvals. And then purchases up to $10,000 are executed only by the purchasing manager. So in other words, from $2,500 to $999, the purchase order itself, it's executed by me, which is the purchasing manager. Now, the approval on the requisition side is different. So now we're talking about the signature on the purchase order. If it's less than $10,000, you only require one signature. Anything above the $10,000, it's going to require the purchasing manager and the assistant city manager who approves the purchase orders. Okay, here we have the bidding process for level 2. Anything over $10,000 to $2499.99. The level 2 is similar than level 1. So the department is required to get electronic signatures or electronic quotes from the vendors. They cannot say, hey, I talked to Tom and he gave me a quote. No, it has to be a written quote. Okay. Departments are required to provide 3 electronic quotes. If it's in the department's responsibility to ask the vendor if they have an existing contract, like I said earlier. If you can provide an existing contract, we'll look at it and we'll process the PBA. With any local government agency, the city can proceed with the PBA contract. If a PBA contract or non-quotes were received, the procurement department will decline the requisition. The purchase order will not be processed. Then we get back to the department and say, hey, how did you get these quotes? Who did you speak with? Did you provide the proper information to all three vendors? So these are some of the questions that my staff speaks with the other staff members of the city, okay? Okay. And in this process, in our system, I'm going to say ERP system, the approval is the director, the department director, the purchasing manager, and the finance director. Like I said earlier, if it's an IT product, then we have different. If there's a vehicle that we're purchasing, then we're going to have our fleet maintenance supervisor review that as well and approve it in the system. Okay? And please note that purchases over $10,000 require the purchasing manager and the assistant city manager to execute the purchase order. Does anybody have questions in regards to this level process? Because now I'm going to go into a sealed bid process. Yes, ma'am. Can you come up to the mic? I'm not going to be able to hear you. Sorry to put you on the spot. Chase, can you turn that mic on?
I was wondering if any of the levels require minority participation.
No, unfortunately, the city does not have that. That was one thing I'm going to talk about later in the presentation, okay? Okay, so we go to level 3.
One more question, please.
Yes, sir.
So when it's less than 2,500, you require
3 quotes.
Workers' comp?
Yes, we do. No matter if it's $2,400 and anything from $2,500, even $2,200 requires insurance. If it's a service, you're going to require insurance. The city requires insurance. Okay? Even if it's $1,500 and you're coming to do a cleaning job for the city, you're going to have to request. We're going to talk a little bit more in depth about the insurance requirement, but just so you know, to answer your question, yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions? All right, now level 3 is more of a little bit, our purchasing department handles this level, okay? So here, purchases greater than $25,000 to $49.99. Unfortunately, that's our policy. $49.99 requires an informal solicitation. So the department submits a scope of services to our procurement department, and our staff members prepares an informal request for quote. So an informal request for a quote is not a sealed bid, it's an informal. So when we post these, we typically post these on vendor link. I'm going to discuss that as well through the process here. But the bidding process, we post it on vendor link for about 15 days. That is just an informal. Sometimes a contract is processed through an informal process. Sometimes it's just a one-time purchase. So our level 3 is $25,000 to $49.99. Sometimes there's an exception. If the department is in critical need of the product, what they do is they'll reach out to the multiple vendors and they'll request a quote. So at the discretion of the city manager, they can do that, okay? So in other words, an informal quote allows the bidding process if you submit a quote late, even for an informal solicitation. We have a date and time on these quotes. If you do not submit it by the proper time, we will decline that. We will not accept it. Once the steps are completed, then a PO is processed and sent to the department, and a copy is forwarded to the vendor by the department. So if you are dealing with one of our departments and you have not received a purchase order for a product that they say, hey, we're going to buy this from you, you can reach out to them directly, okay? They can let you know where the purchase order sits, if the purchase order is waiting for a budget transfer, if the purchase order is waiting for funds to be, sometimes they go over their account, they have to do some budget transfers, so that takes time. So please get with your department that you're dealing with, and you can request, hey, how long it's going to take to get this purchase order. That information is available to you. Okay, and then we continue with number 3. The only way to exempt this process, like I said, is under a PBA contract. So I talk about a PBA a lot because this helps the departments reach what they're looking for. If you are a vendor and you have an existing co-op contract with a local government agency or even a county, we can use those contracts. And that necessarily doesn't mean that only the department you're dealing with is going to be utilizing this contract. We have multiple departments here: fire, police, plants, fleets. They all use the same contract. So what we do is, when we process that agreement and we get it fully executed, we share that information with the departments and say, hey, we have this contract. If you're looking for some products or services, here's the contract. And so what they'll do is they'll reach out to you and say, hey, we have a contract, I want to purchase something. One thing I do want to say about that is that if we're using a PBA contract, I request the vendors to, when you submit that quote to the department, that you provide the PBA contract or the existing original contract number, as well as any discounts. So let's say if we have a contract with Seminole County, the city is using that contract, and you're giving Seminole County 10% off for parts or services, we would like to see that in the quote as well. So we want to be able to distinguish that you are giving us that same price that you say you are. Because if I receive a quote from you and you're saying, hey, we have a PBA contract, but the information is not on the quote that you're providing us, then how do I know for sure that you are giving us that price? So typically what we do is we'll hound the departments and say, hey, you need to talk to your vendor. Why aren't they putting this language in the quote? We need to see that. We also need to see that 10% and what the cost is. Okay? Anybody have questions about that?
Is that something new?
Excuse me?
Is that something new?
It's not new. It should be done, but it hasn't been done. Okay? All right. So let's get back to my thing here. A sample of the agreement can be found on the city's webpage. We have a sample of the PBA contract on the city's webpage. All you need to do is go to departments, go to finance. We are under the umbrella of the finance department. We are a division under finance. So once you click on finance, you'll see purchasing and you'll see everything that we typically post. Our sample of the PBA as well as our terms and conditions are posted online. Okay. Let's go to now level 4. Level 4 is a little bit more complicated. Level 4, purchases greater or equal to $50,000 are considered a sealed bid. So now we're talking about me working with the department, getting a scope of services. We'll put a solicitation together. We'll post it for 30 days, and that posting goes on VendorLink. We do have in the city's webpage under purchasing. If you click on purchasing, right below that last bottom page, I don't know if you can get on there, Chase, can you? On the VendorLink? No, you have to click on one of the links. Okay, we'll get that to them a little bit. So if you go on the city's webpage, there's instructions on how to log into VendorLink. We typically ask you to go through our webpage because there's instructions. If you're already familiar with VendorLink, you go straight to VendorLink. But we ask that the vendors go directly to our site. You can also see what type of events we have available and other things that are happening in Sanford. You can also see the specific projects that you are looking to be involved in. They're typically all the construction projects and anything over $25,000 that are considered formal is posted on vendor link. All right? So the process for seal bids is an invitation to negotiate, which is considered an ITM, an invitation to bid, which is an IFP, a request for proposal, which is RFP, and request for qualifications, which is an RFQ. The purchasing manager processes solicitation with the assistance of the department. The department is required to submit a scope of services. The bid is advertised, so we advertise our bids through the Orlando Sentinel. So once you see that bid that kicks in and it's open to the public, that bid is advertised that same day in the Orlando Sentinels. Sometimes it might be a day or two later, but typically the newsletter, the first page of our solicitation will tell you when it's posted on the Orlando Sentinel, okay? Let's see. The purchasing office posts the bid on vendor link for 30 days. So anything that is a sealed bid, we post for 30 days. Sometimes we have to do an extension based on the project or plans or something, the documents are not, has to make an adjustment. Our engineers have to make some adjustments to the plans. Then we will extend that project for you. So typically, a sealed bid is posted for 30 days. We post addendums, questions, and changes to the solicitation. It's all posted on vendor. All questions or emails should be addressed only to the purchasing department during the process of the solicitation. So in other words, if you have a bid that we have online, you are not required to contact the departments. You're not required to email the departments. You are not required to call our city manager's office or commissioners or any city staff member. There is a code of silence in place as long as the bid is awarded. So once that bid is awarded, the code of silence is no longer active. Okay. So we have our policies and procedures available to the public. We don't have them on the city's webpage right now, but we do. If you need anything that relates to purchasing, all you need to do is submit a public records request through our city clerk department, and they will contact our department. We will send them the information, and they will send you everything that you need, okay? So if it's an active bid, we do not, you cannot get any solicitations through the city clerk. It has to be a bid that's been awarded or something that you're looking for. Okay? And we have a procedure which is a 6.400, which is a code of silence in effect. And we also have the procedure 5.100. Those are all procedures for solicitations. All right. This is something that some departments do. And splitting purchases is a city policy. We do not allow the departments to split purchases, even on their P cards. They will be a disciplinary action will take place if this happens. We do audits on these bids sometimes and or purchases. So when that happens, then the person is in violation of city policy. So for instance, let's do an example here. If I call you and say, hey, I need a quote that's under $24.99.99 because that's our threshold. It's anything over $2,500, you're required to get quotes. If I called you and say, hey, I need a quote, I need a generator that costs less than that. 2 days later, hey, I need another generator. That is splitting the purchases. Okay? If there's an emergency, that's a different situation, and we're going to talk about that in a minute in the presentation. So we do need to make sure our job in purchasing is to make sure that the department staffs are not splitting the purchases. So this typically talks about the process. Okay? This list that we have is pretty much for our department heads, but I wanted to include it here so that you are aware of what they can't, what is a direct payment for goods and services. So I'm going to talk about that. In this list, the purchase of goods and services which are exempt from competition. The following is a list of items which may be purchased and paid directly without the requirements of a contract, a task authorization, a purchase order, a field appeal, or P-card transactions. Items not listed are not applicable to direct paycheck request procedures. We have a city procedure which is 17.100. If you want a copy of that, we also can send that to you. However, this list is pretty much for our staff members that they are only able, if you see anything, a postage, travel, tuition, all approved reimbursements, payments to government entities from one entity to another, those are exempt. So we do not have, the department does not have to process a purchase order for that. So I just wanted to share that with you. All right, now this is what I want to talk a little bit more about VendorLink. VendorLink has an affiliation with the city other than a service. Services that facilitates, we only communicate with each other. The VendorLink site is only a communication portal for us to be able to solicit our solicitations through VendorLink. I highly recommend that if you are not registered with VendorLink, that you do so today. Why? Because this is where we post all of our solicitations. Anything from $25,000 to $2 million, $4 million, even $9 million projects that we have. So I encourage you to register with them. Please know that if there's an issue or a problem with their sites, we are not responsible. Okay, you need to call them directly. We only use this portal to just upload our solicitations, our contracts, insurance, and things of that nature. Okay, so the next slide is talking about our Consultants Competitive Negotiation Act, which is also known as the CCNA. The CCNA contracts are for professional services such as architectural, engineering, landscaping, register survey, mapping, etc. So if you fall into this category, typically what our purchasing department does is we do a solicitation for these types of services and we'll post it online for 30 days and it's through the procurement office because the departments sometimes are looking for engineering or some of these services that we can use under a contract. And please be mindful that when we do a solicitation, a CCNA, this is only for city staff. It's not for CDBG because they require specific contracts and individual CCNAs for them. It's not for the CRA board. They also require to have their own solicitations when they do these services. And it's only for the utilities, plants, and those departments, finance, and those types of departments where they're looking for a survey or engineering firm. So the CCNA follows the Florida Statute 287-055. The city has several contracts in place for this type of services. The purchasing manager typically processes a new solicitation every 3 years to bring in new consultants. The departments can utilize these contracts for specific projects, and we also have a procedure for that, procedure 13.100. So typically, these contracts are supposed to have an expiration date. Typically, these contracts only last 5 years. That is the Florida statute. However, our contracts that we have in place right now do not have an expiration date. So we're going to be processing new solicitations here in the next year or so to update those contracts that's in contract now. Committee members do already done this. What we do is we renew your contract and then the committee doesn't have to evaluate business with the city. Then we have a committee in place and they'll do the whole entire evaluation process. It takes about a month before we can get everybody together and award those contracts to the top 3 vendors in this process. Anybody have questions about this?
In accordance, really open for 30, or are they only going to be?
Those are considered,
Okay.
unless, like I said earlier, unless the department is in need of a service, at the discretion of the city manager without posting it on vendor link. But typically, yes, we post. If you work in the construction industry, you probably know what CMAR stands for. If you don't, I'm going to give you a little. I guess my notes didn't come through for this one. I'll tell you construction management at risk solicitation a couple months ago, and we were able to award it to 8 contractors. So this helps our department staff process project on the, well actually no, not Wordsmith, sorry, because that was a specific project. But we have a consultant in place right now that's helping some of the departments with some of the projects that sometimes when we post them online, you don't get a solicitation. Or maybe we received when it was too high and we didn't have the money for it. So this is the reason why we started using the CMAR in place. They also follow the Chapter 287055 for statute, and these projects are for projects that are $4 million or less. Anything above the $4 million, we typically have to post it on vendor link. We cannot award you to one of these contractors. So we have to post it, it has to go on for 30 days and so on. So this is our first time using the CMAR construction. We're all new to this, and excuse us if we get something wrong here or there, but we're learning as we go along. So in a CMAR or CCNA contract, these are the specific requirements that we ask the vendors to have. So let me tell you a little bit about what we ask you to submit. So first of all, we have section 00860, which is a task authorization form that the department is supposed to complete and tell you, hey, based on this CMAR, or not CMAR, but typically more of a CCNA contract, for services, they say, this is what we need. Now it's up to the vendor to submit a scope based on that TA. So when they process the TA is supposed to be executed by the vendor and then submitted to the department with the scope of services. So those 2 documents are supposed to be submitted with your quote. The scope of services, your rate sheet, critical, very critical. If you are an existing customer or client with the City of Sanford and you have a CCNA with us, your rate sheets are good probably for a year, but if you decide all of a sudden, hey, I'm changing my rates because everything is going up, or whatever the issue may be, those rates cannot be just automatically changed. They have to be approved by the city. The city has to make sure that they approve those rates. It doesn't matter what department you're working with. And we have to do an amendment to your contract. So if you have those rate sheets and you're coming January 1st, you want to say, hey, I want to change my rates, fine, you can do that. However, the city needs to approve that before you decide to say, hey, I have a contract that I'm working on some things for you. I'm now in the middle of working on this project and you decide to change those rates, you can't do that, okay? We have to make sure that we follow procedures and that those rates are approved by the city, and then we do an amendment to your contract. We also ask, which is the price sheet, okay, and then if you're using a subcontractor with the CCNA, for example, if you are a GIS company and you need a survey done and you don't do those services, and you hire a sub-consultant to do that work for you, and then you charge the city for it, there's a form that we have that is called the Proposed Schedule of Subcontractors Participation Form. That form needs to be completed and approved by the department before you decide to use that vendor to do some of your work for you. So there's a couple forms here that we need to be completed and submitted to the department and say, hey, I don't provide the services, but we do have a subcontractor under us, and we want to help you with those services, but the department has to approve those. And the form has to be completed. We also have the construction contracts cannot exceed. So this is just talking about how the construction projects, if you're using a CMAR and you're doing construction that's going to go over the $4 million, then guess what? Oops, you can't use that CMAR contract. So we have to do a solicitation for that project. So, and then if you're an engineering or an architect or anything like that, and you're providing a service to the city, though that cap is off at $500,000. Okay, so you can't go over the $500,000, but we'll have to do a solicitation for that. Does anybody have questions regarding that? No? Okay. Term contract. Based upon the goods and services, contracts are awarded for 1 year with automatic renewal, or 5-year contract, or a 3-year contract with an additional 2-year, 1-year renewals. And then it cannot exceed the 5-year contract. Please note that the city staffs are not authorized to sign a PO, contract, leases, or software leases or agreements of any type of agreement. The departments are not allowed to sign anything, even a task authorization form. Those task authorization forms are signed by the assistant city manager or the city manager or the mayor. Those are the only 3 people that are authorized to sign any type of information, any type of contracts or lease agreements or anything of that nature. Even our finance director has authority to sign agreements. An agreement requested by a vendor must be submitted to the procurement department for review and sent to the city attorney for review. So in other words, if you are a software company, like we did with Microsoft, we have to sign their agreement to use your product. Well, what we typically do is that lease agreement is sent to the procurement office. The procurement office reviews it, has any questions, they will submit that to our city attorney. The city attorney will say name or go ahead, approve it, sign. We do not sign any agreements unless the city attorney authorizes us or has any. If he has any questions about the agreement, we will get with the department, we'll send that information to the department will reach out to the vendor. Simple as that. If we decide that we do have a contract specialist that once that position is available, we're going to have that person do all of that so that we can cut the middleman. But for the most part, this is how we've been doing it for years, and this is how we're going to be doing it until we receive that person in place. So that person will be handling all the contracts, lease agreements, software agreements, any type of agreement that we may have, they're going to be managing that. Anybody has questions about that? Okay, so the following contracts are prepared by the city attorney. Typically, all agreements are prepared by the city attorney. The city does not execute vendors' agreements unless it's for software, lease agreements, like I mentioned. Bank services, we have to sign their agreements. There's an exception when it comes to software, banking services, and lease agreements. The city will process an agreement for sealed bids, informal bids, cooperative contracts, etc. All agreements are prepared and approved by the city attorney for clarification purposes, okay? Just want to mention that. We do have, like for construction projects, the procurement office will process a 520 agreement, and typically, it's usually a 520 agreement. However, recently we started using the AIA contracts. So when we use the AIA contracts, we'll have the consultant work with the city staff members to coordinate the contracts and make sure that the city is getting everything that they're requesting on that solicitation. So if you see an AIA contract coming from us, it's a construction contract. Okay? Anybody have questions about that? Okay, we get into the single source and sole source justification. This is a little hot topic in the city that we've been working with our city attorney with, and it's a little touchy because some departments believe that some vendors have only one product that no one else carries. That's what a single source is. If you're a vendor that you say, hey, I only sell or have this make and model that only fits your equipment, that's considered a single source. So I'll discuss that. A single source, sole source justification exists only if the goods and services are required to satisfy the city's needs are available from only one supplier, and no reasonable alternatives exist to serve the best interest of the city. So in other words, the department has to do their own research, and they have to make sure that you are the only supplier that has this product that fits this pump or machine or whatever it is that they're purchasing. They have to make sure that you're the only one that can provide this product. So they have to do a little bit of research to be able to tell me, hey, I want to buy this software. Who's ringing? Hopefully it's not me. Okay. That could only provide this product. So they have to do their due diligence before they say, hey, I want to use ABC because they know the city, they've been doing business with the City of Sanford for 10 years. No, sorry, that's not happening. Okay, we've got to give opportunities to other vendors, and this is why we're having this method fair here today, because we want to be able to open the doors to other vendors to participate and do business with the City of Sanford. So, just for the record, the Florida Statute 287-057 3C and 120.573. These are not my rules. This is a Florida chapter. We use these. Yes, sir.
Yes, I was wondering, now that you mentioned that, what does a vendor needs to get their product approved by the city? Is there a procedure for that?
A procedure?
To get, let's say that you mentioned generators. If I got a generator made that the city is has not approved yet.
I hate to ask you to come to the mic because I'm having a hard time listening to you.
What I was trying to convey is, what if I have a generator, you mentioned that example, made that hasn't been approved to the city, by the city. What is the procedure to get that generator approved?
It's up to the department. If they're looking for a specific product, what you can typically do is you can reach out to the departments and say, hey, I have this product. It's one of the greatest products in the world. It's only by our company. It has 500 horsepower, whatever it is. You can introduce yourself to each department by sending them an email and saying, hey, we provide these services, because eventually they're going to need to your services if it's a product that they're looking for. So what they do is they'll keep your information and they'll reach out to you when the time comes. I don't typically know what they need until they need it.
I'm just bringing up this example just because sometimes there are certain like makes that are approved. Sometimes
we don't have that process. We don't know.
And does the city is the one that approves that, or does the city uses a consultant to get the product approved?
No, we don't use a consultant. If it's a product, let's give you an example here. I don't know if everybody knows about the story that we had here with one of the lift stations here or vacuum pump that we had recently that was provided by one particular product, one vendor, okay? That vendor ended up employing from that company, shifted over and decided to open up his own company, okay? For a decade, the city was buying products only from this vendor because the city assumed that this vendor was only one supplier and that equipment only worked in that pump, okay? So guess what happened? This guy left the company, created his own company, and he created a product similar to the product that they had, which helped, by the way, the city. And it was less to the city. So in those cases like that, we typically post anything that is a single source, we post it on vendor. So you'll get an opportunity to see, we post a notice of intent to say, hey, the city is going to buy this product from this vendor, and this is what the product is. This is it might have a serial number or description of whatever it is that they're buying. We post it online for 15 days because that is a Florida statute requirement. We are required to post it online for 15 days before this department decides, hey, I'm going to use this vendor. So there is an opportunity for you to reach out. That's why I'm saying it's critical that if you've never done business with the city and you've never done any, if you work through vendor link, then I would suggest that you register with them because that's the only site that we use when we post these solicitations, okay? Did that answer that question?
Yeah, I think one thing, do you by any chance use the FSA in order to cherries?
We do. We do.
So software the service I've done through.
Yes, we do, and I'll talk about that in a second, okay? So to answer his question, we typically post these single source on vendor link, and if you see something that you also carry, then you have a certain amount of time to send us a quote and tell us, hey, this is our product, this will work in your, you can talk to the department directly when it comes to a single source. You can reach out to the department because I don't typically know what they need, and when you talk to them, they can give you additional information that we may not have, okay? Alright, so we go on to the next one. Okay, now we're going to talk a bit about emergency procurement. Can we get a little bit of silence over here? You can talk to the staff when we're done with our presentation, if you don't mind. So the emergency justification is defined when a condition might adversely affect the health and safety or welfare of its citizens, employees, or when the city property or equipment are in danger of the situation, which may cause major financial impacts to the city, and should immediate action not be taken. So in other words, if it affects all of these people, then the department has to process an emergency justification with the procurement departments. And they have to also provide at least 2 quotes saying, hey, we reached out to 2 vendors, this is an emergency, we need to get it done, and we will process it. But it is a Florida statute, 287-057-3CA. So you're more than welcome to look at that emergency procurement. So after the agency had signed such as a written determination, the agency may proceed with the procurement of the commodities or contractual services necessitated by immediate danger without receiving competitive field bids. So in other words, this is an example where we know how to do a competitive field bid, and they can go ahead and process the emergency. However, the emergency procurement should be made by obtaining pricing information from at least 2 vendors, like I said, 2 prospective vendors, which may be retained in the contract files, unless the agency determines in writing that the time required to obtain the pricing information will increase the immediate danger to the public health, safety, or welfare of the situation or loss to the state. So if it's a critical emergency and it's health or safety, then we will proceed. Any questions about the emergency procurement? Yes, sir, come to
Do
my.
you have a pre-approved vendor list, or how do you become a vendor?
We do not. The departments typically have their own list of vendors, and they know who to reach. But like I said earlier, if you provide a service, I would suggest that you just reach out to them directly and just give them your business card and say, hey, we provide the services, because when an emergency arises, I can guarantee you that if it's a service that you provide, they will be reaching out to you. Okay, thank you. All right. The sale of surplus materials or equipment. The department is required to notify the finance department when an asset is obsolete, no longer needed, or reaches capacity. The finance department will arrange the auctioneers to pick up the materials and equipment. This includes parts, machinery, vehicles, furniture, any type of asset. The city has a contractor in place to pick up the equipment or materials at low cost to the city. So if the city decides that we no longer need these tables or vehicles that have obsolete, no longer have reached the mileage, we typically have an auctioneer pick up the materials at no cost to the city. They come at least every quarter based on the equipment and materials that the city has. They can come on a monthly basis if they need to, but we have a contract in place for this type of service. So if you are a vendor, we typically, in this particular contract, we're using a PBA contract. Don't ask me who the vendor is, because at this point I don't know, but we do have a PBA contract in place, okay? And this is a Florida statute that each county and city are required to follow. So the Florida statute is 274.05. The departments, when they also get rid of a product that they no longer need, there is a process that they have to go through. They have to submit required proper documentation, and any information requiring this type of asset, you can reach out to city clerk and they can provide you with the information. I know it's 2 o'clock, and before I can get into the insurance, this is going to take a little while. We can take a 10-minute break, and you can use the restrooms, get the water, talk to our staff members, and we can come back in 10 minutes. so much. Hello. I want to be able to get you out of here before 4 o'clock. So if you guys can gather yourself together, have a seat, we'll have another opportunity to talk to our department staffs afterwards.
Marisol, I'm sorry, excuse me. They're not here today. their cell phone in here. If anybody finds a cell phone, please return it to me. I don't know what type of cell phone this is. Can we all have a seat? Thank you. We're ready to begin the part 2. There are some people who are ready and some who aren't. Please, over here. I need a bell. Maybe that will get your attention. Thank you, I appreciate that. I'm going to begin. If you miss something, the PowerPoint presentation will be available. But please have a seat. We need a little bit of silence. Tanika, get your vendors to sit down. Can we all take a seat? We need some
little bit of peace and quiet here while I continue my presentation. Yes, sir. All right, are we all settled in? Please? Please, department, if vendors to sit, please. We'll have another opportunity where you can talk to our staff members. Thank you so much. For those of you who stayed for the last portion of this, I appreciate you staying. We lost half the people here, but that's okay. The presentation will be available. Chase? Do we need to do anything over here? No, we're good? Okay. All right, so I want to talk a little bit about insurance, because insurance is one of the critical components that does not, how do I say this, that the vendors have issues providing. Because I am going to talk about the level, the higher level of insurance, only because if you're doing business with the City of Sanford and you have a contract that's more than 365 days a year, for the whole entire year, you're going to want to listen to this presentation, because these are some of the insurance requirements that we request the vendor to have. Please do not call me, but our risk management, one of our risk management team members is here today. This policy is written by their department. We just follow it, because that is our requirement when we do business with a vendor, okay? So, in this level, we have workman's compensation. When the contract exceeds 180 days, the unusual hazardous excess, level 3 insurance, certificate of exemptions. Oh, by the way, workers' comp, I know that if you're a vendor and you only have less than 3 employees, or you're just your own business owner, you don't have workman's comp, or the state of Florida exempts you from having workman's comp because your business is so small. Unfortunately, the city does not accept that. You have to have a minimum of $500,000 worth of insurance, depending on the type of services that you're providing to the city. Like I said, if the level 3, I'm going to talk about the high level, but we have level 3, 2, and 1. So level 1 is pretty much anything for 25 days. If you're going to do a service, you're going to paint the building, you're going to do some pressure washing or anything of that nature, then the minimum requirements is going to be general liability, auto, and workman's comp. That is a fact. We cannot waive this insurance requirements. Okay? Typically, now and then, we'll waive, for example, if a cleaning company is just going to come and clean the floors, do not high windows, but if they're going to do low windows, or anything that doesn't cause you to fall or get hurt, then we may reach out to the city manager and say, hey, boss, we need this waived. They're only going to be here for a couple days. That's a possibility, because every rule is broken, right? But we choose not to do that unless it's an emergency or something critical needs to, it's happening. But this is typically our level 3. I'm going to discuss the workman's comp. It's at least $1 million. Employees' liability is $1 million, and each accident is $1 million, and the disease is $1 million for workman's comp. Okay. This is typically all included in your workman's comp. You may not know it, but it is if you get $1 million policy. So second is the general liability. The general liability contracts that exceed 180 days and unusual hazards exist, level 3 insurance is what we're going to require from the vendor. The bodily injury liability, property damage liability, personal injury liability, advertising insurance liability. These are all types of liabilities that are included in your general liability that you probably are not even familiar with. I don't know if most of you look at your general liability or read your policies, because I'm one of those that don't read it. It doesn't hurt you that if we require you to have it, to reach out to your insurance company and say, hey, I need commercial general liability. Does this include this and this and that? A simple yes or no. Also, it's going to have collapse. If you're building a building for the city, if you're doing a construction project, you're going to need builder's risk insurance. Those are the types of insurance that we ask for when you're working on a construction project. One of the things that we've included recently was sexual harassment, abuse, and molestation. Why? Okay. You're working near school. Some child or an adult, doesn't necessarily mean child, but an adult, you see someone harassing someone, it doesn't matter. You're working in an area where there's children involved or anything like that, you are required to carry this insurance. It's included in your commercial general liability. Sometimes it's not included, and it costs the vendor an additional cost. But these are some of something new that the city decided to include in our insurance. So when we say you need to have this type of insurance, there's a reason why. Either you're working with in the treatment plant and you're around the water, those are things, or city staff members or anything of that nature. That's something that we're requiring the vendors to carry. Okay, the next slide is if you're a contractor that has a CCNA or CMAR contract, we require the vendors to provide professional liability. Professional liability is if it exceeds 180 days. Less than that, obviously, we're going to require, typically across the border, even if the project is only for 20 days, we still require you to have professional liability. Not everybody submits professional liability. This is only for like architectural, engineering firms, if you're working on some plans for the city, if you're working on a proposal for the city, or things of that nature, we require professional liability. But professional liability is only when the city says, okay, we're going to require it because of this project. So not all projects require that. Just the typical insurance is general liability, adult, and workman's comp, like I said. Okay? Builder's risk is only when required. Contracts exceed 180 days. And if you're off-site storage, installation, equipment breakdown, these are all types of requirements that we ask you to carry when you're providing builder's risk. And builder's risk is 100% of the completed value of addition and structures. So the builder's risk is pretty much for construction projects. The comprehensive auto liability. If you are coming to the city property, any location that the city may have a building, for example here, if you're going to be doing business with Al and his staff, and he processes the purchase order, and you're doing something for him, we require you to have auto. Because on your way to City Hall or to any city property, you can get into a car accident, you can hit someone's car here by accident, something of that nature may occur, and guess who's responsible? City does not want to be responsible for that. And typically, when we ask for insurance, we ask for the city to be additional insured to the auto, to the general. I think those are the only two that we ask for, additional insured. Professional liability, we don't need to be included. And then we also need to make sure that the certificate holder, there's a name at the bottom on the certificate or the accord form, it has to say the City of Sanford. the City of Sanford has to be the certificate holder, as well as additional insured to the GL and the AL. Okay? Let's see what else. Oh, by the way, the highest policy is $1 million. So if you have a $2 million, great, we accept that, but the minimum is $1 million. And these are the requirements here. We also have, if you're, we get a lot of vendors who, let's say for auto bodies. When we take a vehicle to an auto body shop and the auto body shop cannot complete the job, that vehicle sits there for a week, maybe a couple days. We have to request garage keeper from that vendor. Because if there is theft, if the car was being broken into, an accident happened while the vehicle was in their shop, the city wants to make sure that that is covered. The city does not want to be responsible for that. Okay. Hi, Fred. Is that Fred back there? No. All right. So, garage liability. We also request garage liability. It's a $3 million combined single limit. And we also ask for cybersecurity. If you're a software company and you're providing a service to the city, cloud-based or whatever it is they call it nowadays, because now everything is cloud-based, we require you to have cybersecurity. Why? Because, as you all know, there's been many cyber attacks online and people losing money online, and the city wants to be protected. So if you're working with software services, ERP systems, or anything of that nature, we require you to have a $5 million policy. Okay? If you carry umbrella policy, some vendors may not carry that. We require that the city, if you have umbrella policy, we ask you to say, there's 2 little words here, or 3 words, where it says follow form only. So you could say the City of Sanford is additional insured to auto, general, and general liability, and umbrella to follow form. We accept that language. So there's a language that we only accept. So if we go back to you and say, hey, we need this removed, there's a reason why. So we typically ask the department, the vendors, that if they have umbrella policy, to please say umbrella follow form, which means that it will cover the commercial liability. If they exceeded their policy, that umbrella policy will cover the remaining cost of that accident or whatever it is. Okay? Okay. Anybody have questions about insurance? That's a kind of a sore subject to talk about. Nobody likes to get insurance because it's expensive, but it's a requirement. And I'm going to go through this slide so we can get out of here. Okay, now processing an invoice. Renee is here. In case we have any questions, she's our AP girl. Alright, so when processing an invoice, for purposes of billing submission and payments procedure, a proper invoice by a contractor, consultant, or other invoicing party should conform to the following process. A description, including a quantity of goods and services provided reasonably sufficient to identify it, the amount due, the applicable discount. Like I said earlier, if you're using a PBA contract and you're providing the city 10%, that should be included in the quote. The full name of the vendor, the contractor, or the party who is supplying the goods and services, including a mailing address in case of dispute, and a mailing address for payment purposes, or in case it is different. A telephone number should be included, a purchase order and contract number should always be included in your invoice. So if you're billing me for a service that I already received from you, please make sure that you have a copy of your purchase order as well as a contract number if there's one in place, okay? Let's see what else. All invoices are required to provide a purchase order. So when you're processing that invoice, make sure that you have that purchase order number to include. It's very critical because we typically get, AP typically gets a ton of invoices, and sometimes it doesn't even have a person's name that you're dealing with, or the department or a purchase order, and we're trying to figure out whose invoice this is. So we're trying to pay it by a certain amount of days, because we all know we have a certain amount of days to pay an invoice. And sometimes it overpasses because we don't know who it belongs to. So now we have to call the vendor. Sometimes our procurement department has to call the vendor and say, hey, we apparently somebody received an order. We don't know what department it belongs to, so we're relying on you guys to make sure that the information is on that invoice so that it is easily available to the departments to review it. Because remember, when that invoice gets to our hands, there's a process. So that invoice goes to the department has to make sure that they receive this product, then it gets approved by the department, and then it goes to AP for payment. And so it's a process. So we want to make sure you guys get paid on time. A contract from the division department of the office of the party or parties of whom the goods were delivered or services provided. Invoices are processed twice a month. Every pay period that we get paid, that invoice is cut. And there's a timeline that we have to meet. Before, like if you send me an invoice on Wednesday, Renee, what's the cutoff? Typically it's on a Wednesday, right?
My cutoff on the first.
Yeah.
Invoices on Thursday.
On Thursdays. Which typically, if the department doesn't provide her with that invoice by a certain time, she has to wait till the next pay period. So that's another 2 weeks that you're waiting to get paid. So we don't want to do that. So we're gonna make sure that those invoices get to the proper department. Let's see. Our mailing address for any type of statements or invoices is 300 North Park Avenue, 32771. You can do attention AP accounts payable, or when you receive that purchase order, on your right-hand side of that purchase order, there's an email address that we created in-house for our department staff. So when they process that PO, we know it's going to a specific department. You can send that invoice directly to that email address. If you get a bounce email, then the person is no longer with the city, or there's something wrong with our email system server. So I recommend that you do that first. Typically, a lot of the things that AP do nowadays, everything's electronically, right? Everything you do is electronic. So the invoices can go directly to that email address that's on the purchase order. One quick thing, we encourage all vendors to complete an ACH form. So if you are a vendor that's already been doing business with the city and you're still receiving a check, please pick up, I know Tanika has some vendor forms on her desk. Pick up one of those forms and complete it and submit it to us. We will change your account to an ACH payment, which it goes directly into your checking account or savings account, whichever it is. But please be mindful that if you're making a change, once you have already established this ACH payment with the city and you're changing banks, the verbal communication must be met with our procurement staff before we can make a change to your account. Why? Because there's fraud. We've had this done to us before. We sent money to a vendor that said they changed their account information. And guess what? I don't know if anybody heard about the story here with the school board system. There was about $3 or $4 million that was hacked. It was hacked, and they sent this money out to a vendor who hacked your system. Well, that's what we don't want. We don't want that to happen to the city. So we want to be able to verbally communicate that with you if you're deciding that you want to make a change to your ACH form. Okay? All right, this is just information on the city's webpage. Let's see if this works. This is our city's webpage right here. And then in our purchasing department, we have certain forms that are already established on the city's webpage. We have our W-9. So if you're doing business with us, or if you're a new vendor and you need a W-9, you can pull it up from the city's webpage. You can also receive our tax exempt certificate, which is on the city's webpage. We have the city purchasing policy online. We have the insurance requirements online, we have the purchase order terms and conditions, we have contract terms and conditions. I want to talk a little bit about that because if you are a vendor who submitted a quote to a department and you don't have a contract or you don't have any other backup other than the purchase order because you're providing them a quote. The terms and conditions for purchase order is different from terms and conditions for a contract. So please be careful. If you have established a contract with the city, the contract terms and conditions are going to prevail. If you have a purchase order and no contract, then the purchase order terms and conditions will prevail. We also have a PBA sample contract, a co-op sample of what it's going to look like when we process our PBAs. And we also have a sample of the city's contract that this information is valuable to vendors when they want to know, okay, what does the contract look like, what kind of language the contract has, and so on. So you're more than welcome to look at these contracts. If you submitted a bid with us and you're recently getting awarded a contract and you want to see what's in there before we send you the contract, this is a great example to go up there and pull up this information. Does anybody have any questions about these contracts in terms of conditions and invoicing process? Perfect. All right, so I've added some additional information that will be useful to you. I know a lot of the vendors were asking me if we have a WMBE preference or veterans preference or local veterans preference. Unfortunately, the city doesn't have those type of policies. If you are a contractor, you want to do business, you can submit it, but you are not guaranteed a project based on that, just because you're WPE or the veterans preference. We don't have that. We don't have a policy in place for that, and don't know where we're have one in the future. So we also, let's see, the city does not have a local veteran preference, nor does it. Okay, we don't accept. For example, these vendor forms are here, and you're like, oh, I'm going to take one of these, I'm going to complete it. We don't do pre-registration, or we don't do any type of registration with the vendor unless you are getting a contract or unless the city is processing a purchase order. Otherwise, we would have a ton of vendors in our system, and there's no sense of us having all that data in the system if we're not going to use that particular vendor to do business. So we don't just enter your data in the system just because. So we typically, if you're going to do business with the city and you've been awarded that contract, and we notice that you're not in our system, then we'll reach out to you and say, hey, we need a vendor information. It includes a W-9, an ACH form, and it includes the, what else does this form has? A W-9, an ACH form, and a vendor and remittance information. So if you have a business in Georgia and your mailing address is in Florida, then we need to know. So that information is on the package, which is called the vendor form. And all of this information, we do have a link on the city's webpage where you can download the vendor form. And typically, I'll receive emails saying somebody wants to be a vendor in our system, and what we'll do is we'll save them, but we don't enter that vendor in the system. Like I said, because we have too many vendors in our system, and we want to make sure that the ones that we have are being utilized. Let's see. We talked about that. We talked about. Okay. This additional information continues. Please note the city's tax ID and tax exempt certificate is located on the city's webpage. I mentioned that previously before on the list. There's also one thing that we need to be mindful. The procurement department, we do not accept, well, not just the procurement department, but city local government agencies do not receive gifts and gratitudes are prohibited. That is a no-no. A vendor wants to come and drop off a beautiful basket with the food, or trying to bribe the city for some work. Yeah, that's not happening. Not in purchasing, at least.
Typically, when we get a nice little basket of food, we share it with everybody within the city. But we prefer not to give gifts and gratuities. This page here, I wanted to share with you because this is critical information for you guys. We have the NIGP Central Florida has a reverse trade show November 8th, which means that we, procurement officers, we sit around just like you see these tables out here. We'll sit out there, you come to this vendor fair, and you get to mingle with all the procurement officers in the state of Florida. So you get to see and talk to people who are in the procurement world. And typically in the month of March, we have, the month of March is the procurement month. So you get to see a lot of fairs. That's why we have a lot of cities and counties doing these fairs, because it's a fair for the vendors so they can be familiar with the process of how we do business. And so that gives you an opportunity to meet some of the other procurement officers around the state of Florida. Okay, so if you want to participate in that event, I don't know if they cut it off yet, but it is November 8th. You need to register with centralfloridaniGP.org. All right, and there's also one of the largest NIGP, it's the Forum. It's called the Forum 2024. That's going to be taking place in Charlotte, North Carolina. If you want to participate for that, there is like gold medals or sponsorships. You want to call them sponsorships. And they have a different level of sponsorships to participate during that event. And what happens during Forum, and whatever state that they have them, the procurement officers go to these events and they get trained on the type of work that we do. So we get trained on how to work with vendors, we get trained on what a CCNA is, we get trained on what a CMAR contract is. So a lot of the knowledge that we receive is based on this type of training. So, but it's not excluded to you. You guys, actually, they have particular vendors who do businesses with cities and counties who also participate, and they do trainings and they provide information to the procurement officers. So this is taking place in Charlotte, North Carolina, and there is a limit, but I only went to one forum because I was awarded a scholarship to go to Boston like 2 years ago, which was a great event. It was a beautiful state, first of all, and a lot of knowledge. You receive a lot of training, and it's good for us as procurement officers. So, and as well as the vendors themselves. So if you want to participate in that event, you can reach out to nigp.com. And I believe that is all. Yep, that's it. Thank you for talking. If anybody has any questions regarding other issues or concerns, you're more than welcome to come up here and ask any questions.
My name is Kimberly. I have a brief question in reference to whether the city currently has vendor services out for video production.
Video production? No, but that's a good question because they weren't looking for something like that based on our trainings. We want to be able to do the video productions for this type of training sessions. So if you want to leave me your business card,
Thank you.
we'll talk.